why don't you just come out with it and tell us about some of the things that you found are being taught to children that you thought were particularly contentious, and why you think they're contentious.
Yes, so the reason that I was somewhat concerned is because my daughter returned from a lesson on consent delivered by an outside provider. And she explained that in that day, she hadn't only learnt about consent. She'd been told that we live in a heteronormative world. That was described as a very bad thing that we need to get away from. And that the solution for that was being sex positive in your attitude to relationships.
So just, I'm going to stop you there. So you've mentioned relationships in the context of sex, but we know that relationships education is ostensibly different from sex education because you can pull your kid out of one and not the other. So you're already blurring them up as you speak, but that's because this is the nature of the beast that you're fighting.
Well, yes, I think in some ways you could say that at DFE and policy level there has been a little bit of preparation to maybe keep it a little unclear to parents, either by design or by accident. But it certainly at policy level isn't very helpful. Some things that my daughter has been taught in relationships education very much sound like sex education to me. And then some things that I've been asked to withdraw, for example, the lesson on consent was described as sex education, which I could withdraw her from. But actually consent, you might think, was a relationship topic. So it's all very muddled and hard to navigate.
And you didn't think to withdraw your child from consent lessons because you actually
I didn't. I thought the likelihood was that they would be talking about the legal framework of consent and maybe some emotional aspects to that. And it seems like a sensible topic to discuss amongst teenagers. So no, I didn't withdraw her. But I was worried about the fact that she was being taught something that was ideological. So being told to be sex positive, well, it's very hard not to say that sex positivity is a political perspective. It describes the way you should approach relationships. It's largely contrary to religious belief, for example, and it draws on all sorts of academia and quite contentious ideas, which I know a lot of parents wouldn't agree with. So if it's contentious, it's political, and you shouldn't be advancing or promoting a particular vision, one kind of vision to children. So that's what sort of set me researching a little bit. What actually does this charity mean when they come to tell my child, don't be heteronormative and make sure you're sex positive? What are they training her to think and
what
do?
What are the implications of these positions?
Yeah. And I therefore had a look at the website of the provider, and there they had some example lesson plans. It's important to say this isn't what my daughter was taught, but this lesson plan is there waiting on their website to be used, either by children who come visiting the website for more information or by teachers who are being encouraged to borrow this free resource. And so if I just read this out, for example, so activity 3, this is based on the actual lesson plan asks children to watch a Netflix show called Sex Education, funnily enough. It's an 18 plus show. And
the children being asked to watch this are?
How
old?
Well, they teach from children from year 7 upwards, so from 11 upwards. Right. This particular resource on their website, they said suggested age of 16. But they're asking them to watch an 18 plus movie in order to complete the tasks. And one task was talking about sex and what you want sexually has the potential to be awkward because we don't get much practice doing it. The more we practice something, the easier it gets. With that in mind, write down 1, a list of phrases that could be related to sex, e.g., I like it when you ... or would you like to try ... And then 2, a list of words that could relate to sex, e.g. stroke, wet, hard, etc. And then they ask the kids, once you've had at least 10 on each list, or you have at least 10 on each list, try reading them out loud, looking in the mirror, or on a video call to friends, at least 3 times. So this is sexualizing.
It speaks for itself.
It's sexualizing. Yeah, because a child who is not yet sexually active is now going to enact sexual discourse with another child because they've been asked to by a teacher.
I was going to ask you about that. This is incredibly delicate, of course, and I believe I can speak for you when I say that part of your problem is that you don't think one size fits all. I mean, any kind of exploration of issues of this nature have to be catered for specific groups of children, age appropriately, and each individual child will come from a different background. So of course it's a bit of a maze for even the most seasoned and experienced educator to navigate. So I think we're agreed that there are no easy quick fix solutions, but
that's right.
It strikes me when you're reading that particular resource out, getting children to read out loud sexual acts that they would like to perform with another child, the underlying assumption is that the child is ready for that level of mature sexual activity and articulation. And of course, depending on the child and depending on the age, I mean, children are by definition less ready than adults. And in that resource, it seems that they're primed to be completely ready, completely able to cope with the demands of that activity.
Exactly that. They're assuming that. And I think one of the reasons that is being assumed is because sex positivity has an academic basis. And if you read the academia relating to that, it's very interested in breaking taboos. It's interested in seeing past the purpose of the age of consent. It's interested in considering the child as not innocent, but as a sexual being. These are theories. Sometimes I believe that they are interpreted in ways that are even quite dangerous or permit kind of nefarious interest, actually. And although very often they're forwarded by people who think it's in the best interest, especially of girls, and there's a strong feminist theme to this. It comes out of 1980s sort of feminist argument in America. And we need, I think, as parents, and certainly I think as a society, we need to be better informed about this. We need to know what it is that these teachers are wanting our children to think politically, sexually, socially, and we should be part of the dialogue on that. And you're right, it's not a clear-cut thing exactly when you introduce things to different ages and children with different needs. But it shouldn't be taken over by one monopoly position towards one particular ideological set of thinking.
Right, and so promoting a culture of transparency where there's more open communication between parents and teachers and schools can only do good, surely, because if you have these sorts of privacy and copyright restrictions on parents being able to access materials, it's only going to engender mistrust and a feeling that perhaps something's going on that oughtn't to be going on. And you do have, obviously, in multicultural Britain, a wide range of parents with different concerns and sense of propriety as to what is age appropriate and indeed what schools should be taking it upon themselves to teach. I mean, I think a lot of parents still, in this day and age, see that they have a strong role to play in deciding when a child is ready for certain conversations. So it can be a bit galling to have that all taken away and dealt with behind closed doors, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that we're heading towards, heading down a path that we can probably see ahead of us is very much happening in America. There is political argument arriving at the school gates. There is upset from parents who feel they've lost control of a really important area of their social life and their children's education. And I think it would be really wise for this country to avoid that political argument in our classrooms. And in order to do that, we really need the Department for Education to step forward and start creating some parameters, some much clearer guides. At the moment, the DFE simply says, for example, that with regard to equality teaching and sex education, that LGBT must be introduced, for example, across all lessons or wherever it's appropriate. It doesn't have to be located in one particular special lesson, so it can be embedded across the curriculum. And that must be taught at a timely moment by all schools. And then it just really stops. That's all it says. And that's an open door for anything from very extreme ideas to things which are age inappropriate. And which activists want the children to believe. And teachers are really on the back foot on this, and I sympathise with teachers because they're not experts in LGBT, and in a good point being, actually maybe L, G, B and T all need different forms of teaching or different pieces of information.
It's not self-explanatory. It's not a subject. It's not like geography or early modern British history. LGBT covers
what is its scholastic basis?
And different identities and different political issues, and many of them, as we've seen in recent years in Britain, the concept of gender and gender identity is not just contentious, but recent case law, as Maya Forstadter's Employment Tribunal taught us, that actually people who have reservations about the idea of gender identity are protected under the Equality Act because it is a valid belief.